Prologue. It was like something that fell from outer space. Rising up 40 feet above an otherwise featureless prairie near modern Cawker City, better known today for its gigantic ball of twine, a mysterious artesian well called Wakanda Spring bubbled up from deep underground. The sea-green water filled a perfectly circular pool, 50 feet across, set in a gray limestone mound on the north bank of the Solomon River. It looked like a volcanic crater. Generations of Plains Indians trekked to the spring for ceremonies. In later years, curiosity seekers fished up beads, arrow points, French and Spanish medallions, and human bones. A deep-sea diver hired in 1908 to ascertain its depth failed to find the bottom, though geologists from the University of Kansas using sonar later pinpointed it at 35 meters. In 1767, William Johnson, Britain's superintendent of Indian affairs who once paid the Iroquois a bounty on the scalps of French children, became the first European to see the spring. The explorer Zebulon Pike, following advice from Pawnees, a Guide Rock village, detoured from his unsuccessful trip to climb the peak named for him and toured the spring in 1806. Following Kansas statehood, Cawker City Mineral Company extracted salt from the mineral basin. A bottling company distributed the medicinal Wakanda Flyer nationally, winning a medal at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. In the first years of the 20th century, a series of resort hotels and a sanatorium were built so patients could bathe in pure Wakanda water and drink the briny solution as a mild and gentle laxative, but a sure laxative. Wild landmarks infused with personal and cultural meaning like Wakanda Spring have always been rare. Natural places you can fall in love with, places of passion, of pilgrimage. I've always just called them wild places. Undisturbed remnants of ancient ecosystems, habitats for rare or threatened species, pristine stretches of river, unusual geologic features, exclamations of topography. Wild places aren't merely beautiful landscapes. They possess a totemic lure, a power or a presence that attracts people, sometimes across generational and cultural chasms spanning centuries. As modest as Wakanda Spring, or as continental as Antarctica, the power of a wild place doesn't derive from sheer scale or visual grandeur, nor does it translate necessarily into tourism dollars. Today, the Wakanda Spring site is located in Glen Elder State Park. Steeped in Native American, pioneer, and geologic lore, the spring seems like the perfect focal point for a park celebrating natural Kansas. But don't look for it if you visit Glen Elder, not unless you plan to scuba dive. Despite a desperate battle in the 1950s and early 1960s, the Wakanda Spring was buried under the waters of a reservoir in 1965, sacrificed to mitigate flooding 100 miles downstream in the Kansas River Valley. In keeping with the all things wild and beautiful must be destroyed theme, the builders of Glen Elder Dam bulldozed ruins from the sanatorium into the sacred spring just before the waters of Wakanda Lake buried it forever. Let's be honest. Kansas is not known for its wild places. The state seems to have an inferiority complex of landscape, always trying to be something it isn't. The most prominent feature on the state seal isn't a tallgrass prairie or cottonwood forest, it's a mountain range. Since the last wild bison sought refuge on the back of a nickel, the public image of natural Kansas has progressed from Great American Desert to Dust Bowl to flyover country to coffee table book of sunflower fields, fenced buffalo herds, and rainbows above winter wheat. A placeless farm country landscape. Or so it would seem. While attending graduate school at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, I once stood on the south side of U.S. Highway 40 and watched the intentional destruction of a biologically diverse half-section of virgin tallgrass, locally referred to as the Elkins Prairie. The site provided habitat for two federally threatened plant species, Mead's milkweed and western prairie-fringed orchid. But more than that, it was just cool. A virgin prairie on the outskirts of Lawrence that I could ride my bike to. Pioneers on the California and Oregon trails probably stopped there to take on water from a small seep spring feeding Baldwin Creek. Elkins Prairie was a wild place in every sense. Seeing the tubes of fresh black earth churning out like sausage from the discs of the tractor lit a fire in my heart for the wild places of Kansas. It crystallized a feeling I'd had growing up in the suburbs west of Kansas City, that wild Kansas was a unique crossroads of ecosystems, the place where the last lip of eastern deciduous forest dissolves into a kingdom of grasses, where rivers of bird life flow along time-worn channels in May, where memories of a great biomass equal to the Serengeti still echo across the vast emptiness of the Western Plains. Unlike friends who took their passion for wild places to cities like Boulder, Laramie, and Anchorage, I dug my heels in and began exploring my own backyard. With few exceptions, the places I found, or rather, that revealed themselves to me once I expunged my prejudices about Kansas, are little known to most people who've spent their whole lives in the state. A few are impossible to find on maps, hidden behind barbed wire on private property. Most are magnificently bereft of anything beneficial to 99.9% of modern America. True wildernesses they are not, but we are all sinners. At the correct angle of light, when the south wind blows pollen carrying biological memories of the glaciers, these places are a crack between the worlds, portals to the lost buffalo wilderness, the last wild places of Kansas.